Hey, good morning. It's Saturday, April 30th, 2022 at 8:33 a.m. my time. My name is Patrick Lovell, and I'm a guy that is continuously and relentlessly trying to connect with the millions of people that need to understand how the system works in between clicks, likes, and distractions that make everybody go, I wonder what's happening in the Johnny Depp case. Well, I'll tell you what I think about the Johnny Depp case, which is pretty extraordinary. I've been watching this and I think to myself, my God, could you imagine being a rock star Hollywood celebrity and getting married to a woman like Amber Heard? Beautiful, yeah. Batshit crazy, oh yeah. And does that does that minimize the insanity of Johnny Depp's lifestyle and everything else? Well, he's a rock star. What do you expect? But at the same time, it's like, as far as I can tell, and I'm no expert in the subject, but I've listened to plenty of the testimony. I think Johnny Depp's a good guy, man, and Johnny Depp's a guy that ended up, I think, shelling out something like at least $7 million for a divorce. I think he was married to her for 18 months, and I think he shelled out $14 million in concurrent costs, and then ultimately had his career destroyed while she was leaving dookies on his bed and going to Coachella and partying, her brains out and laughing all the way to the bank. I mean, I hope that Johnny Depp does, all of that crazy stuff with their relationship. I mean, it's sad, and it happens to a lot of people. Maybe not as extreme as those guys, but I think everybody is flawed, and I think a lot of people can relate to what's going on in that circus, because I think a lot of people's relationships have been a circus, especially since 2008 for a lot of people my age, including myself, quite frankly. But you know, to me, it's the bigger aspect of the systemic nature of Johnny Depp's career being completely destroyed in a manner that made him out to be Harvey Weinstein. Johnny Depp's not Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein was a systemic rape to control women, to control their careers for leverage that made him the guy that could control people for his films, and that's what has been a long-standing practice in Hollywood, and that's a big, big difference between Amber Heard, doing a Me Too action, I think, against Johnny Depp, based on what I've heard and seen. Whatever. I mean, I think it's just a shit show train wreck, which brings me to the next aspect of what's on my mind this morning is the economy. Well, yesterday the stock market dropped tremendously. I think we saw a huge drop in the Dow, like 1,000 points. I mean, it was like 700 points in Nasdaq. I'm not sure what the New York Stock Exchange drop was, but it was huge. So that means a lot of people are losing money. I mean, it was interesting to me to see something like Jeff Bezos. I think Amazon lost $100 billion in share value yesterday, and I think Jeff Bezos lost 20 billion. This on top of like what happened with Elon Musk the day before, because of a lot of shifty stuff that happens with the speed of light, especially with billionaires and leverage and hedge funds and all those sorts of things. But I think Tesla lost $100 billion of market share the day before. And what does that mean when a lot of rich people lose a lot of money? Well, it's usually an indicator. I mean, are we in a recession? Well, according to GDP growth, it's actually it was decreased 1.4% when they projected 1.5% increase, and you get another quarter of that, and then that's what's referred to as a recession. But what I learned in 2008, they call it the Great Recession. But ultimately, when you don't have a job and you're struggling and you're trying to keep everything in the air based on your previous income, but you can't, and you've got family members to take care of, and you've got the mortgage, and it's a Great Depression for you. Okay, and I think that constitutes millions of people that I'm trying to reach, because when you look at this schematic, we just came out of. I mean, the way things happen so rapidly is insane, but I guess it makes sense considering technology, of course. But just flashback, 2 years ago, really, the economy came to a standstill because of COVID, right? Government shuts everything down, everybody's on lockdown, and then suddenly, the markets, just go off a sheer cliff, right? But then immediately the Fed got to work. Now, interestingly enough, not many of you are aware that the Fed actually got to work in a very big way before COVID. So in 2019, and I think it was the spring of 2019, might have been May of 2019, that there was a huge run in global markets based on derivatives, and we know the Fed ended up plugging 11.9 trillion in short-term emergency stimulus loans, very similar to what took place in the aftermath of the 2009 collapse, when I keep referencing $29 trillion was plugged into the economy or into Wall Street, I should say, to backstop the madness of the 2008 financial crisis. But I think the numbers might be as high as 23 trillion, quite frankly, from what I've seen. Now, this on top of, yesterday, I'm going to bounce to kind of the next level thing. We've seen a whole bunch of oligarchs just disappeared, right? I think there's been 3 oligarchs in the last several weeks that have been murdered with their families. Yeah, that's a coincidence. And of course, who would be behind that? Well, considering Ukraine and Russia and Putin, I think it's pretty obvious, right? But it made me think about a couple of things that were revealed yesterday. There was another suicide, I believe, of the son of a former president of Deutsche Bank that had hung himself in 2014. And I remember reading this in David Enrich's book, Dark Towers, that tied basically Deutsche Bank and all the crap that it was doing, just like all the banks that we exposed in the 2008 great financial crisis, that have been the intersection between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump and laundering money through all of Trump's real estate. And of course, there's a lot of folks that talk about Russiagate, but it's like, are you freaking kidding me? And then if you think about Jeffrey Epstein, within the context, I mean, it seems pretty freaking obvious to me, this confluence between Putin, Trump, and all of these types of operations. And, it brings me to this point of the conversation, and this is what I need everybody to be aware of. It's all about deception. Okay, so you got to ask yourself, all right, what's more concerning to you or disconcerting? Would it be potentially the loss of democracy or the meltdown of an economy? I think for most people, it would be the meltdown of an economy because that's where it hits them the hardest. People that go to jobs, they work 2 jobs, they have, a husband and a wife that work 2 jobs and they've got 3 children and they've got 4 jobs and they're just trying to keep above water, and that's the work ethic and that's the new normal and all that sort of thing, which is insane, but they can't afford real estate and everything else because of just hyperinflated prices, and they're scratching their head going, oh my God, I go to the grocery store and, milk is, 60% higher than it was. Oh my God, I've got gas that's got, 100% higher than it was. These are all fluctuations and the downstream effect of what we're talking about that happens in the stock market, but most importantly, what happens with Fed Reserve policy, which I've been trying to teach you guys, is ultimately the stabilizer of the world's currency and global economy based on what we've created for the last 40 years. And it's a monster, and it's a monstrous wreck. And it looks to me like, it's already collapsed in many ways, but I can't figure out if we're first quarter of 2008 or fourth quarter of 2008, because a lot of these things have lag times. But ultimately what it means for you is if we have a recession, like I said before, that means it's a Great Depression for you, for most of us. And then if it gets to a Great Depression, then that means the guys, that have been gaming the whole system and the Fed Reserve can't come to the rescue and the whole world's a train wreck. And that just means more war, famine, and death and suffering and things that are completely avoidable if we all understood the truth and we came together, because it's based on deception. We reward deception, and deception preys upon ignorance. The less you know, the more vulnerable you are. And that's why I personally had to make the con, because the system didn't make sense. I had spent 4 decades before that being very involved in I studied political science and geopolitics, and I always understood power. I worked in Hollywood at the highest structures. I became a producer. I've been around a lot of very wealthy people. I've seen the stock market in action. I haven't personally benefited from it in a lot of ways, except for, well, in some ways. But the long and the short of it is that I've had a bird's eye view into how this matrix of power has happened for a long time. And what shocked me above all else was that, wait a second, the law isn't the law? You're telling me that we could literally have a financial system that could create deception at such a mass level that would ultimately blow up the world economy, destroy tens of millions of people in its wake, and then ultimately walk away with trillions upon trillions of dollars to double down. That's what they've done. And they've been able to do it because everybody's chasing their tail. And it's like you look out in the marketplace today and it's like, what's really the difference between now and 20 years ago? We're still completely dependent upon oil. In fact, the only reason that we haven't dipped into massive recession or stagflation or everything else is I think the cost of oil, there's still a major market for it, because that means that, commerce is still happening. So, my vision years ago was I had to understand. I made this documentary film called Forward 13, and it basically was prologue to the con. But what I understood in that process was that we have structures and boards of directors for multinational corporations and cooperation between different industries like the financials, and of course fossil fuels, and then that determines kind of the future of politics, if you want to know the truth, and everything else is bullshit. And so we're getting ready to get primed up for the midterms. You're going to have the new robber barons versus the new Confederacy. You're going to have identity politics and Obama and talking about, ultimately, suppressing technology and voices, through, the term will come to me in a minute. But the long and the short of it is, it's like, Obama's trying to get the toothpaste back in the tube based on social media that could lead to things like Trump, but at the same time hiding his own madness. Okay, that's insane, right? And then Trump, on the other hand, is up to his ears in criminality that are like crazy, but he hasn't been thrown in jail yet, and he's got 70 million followers. That's crazy. People, we have to get, like, so far we've got, like, I think 18,000 subscribers on the on the TikTok page. Please, I'm urging you. I've got to get you guys to like and subscribe to Patrick Lovell Truth Bombs the Con, and please, you have to go to www.thecon.tv. Everybody who's paying attention to 3-minute increments of what I'm trying to educate you guys about, and we're building this awareness, and there's more and more people coming to it, but you got to understand the headwinds that we're up against, okay? I've been up these headwinds, for like the last 5 years, not even really aware of it, because, God, what is the terminology called? And this is really probably the most important thing to think about, net neutrality. So net neutrality got passed during, or overcome, I think, during the Trump administration. So that means that everybody on the internet, the only way you're going to get, algorithms and the way it's written is if you've got A, big brands behind it, B, big money behind it, or C, huge celebrity. Everybody else is fighting for, space in this wild west online and trying to tell everybody what's going on in this world. And I see it all the time in my feeds on YouTube. People are telling me important things, right? Real estate agents that are professionals in places like California are like, my God, the mortgage market has completely collapsed. Oh, here we go again. And that's California, right? I'm getting the same types of things all over the country, and I'm another person like that, except I created the con. And the con is the only thing that shows you from inside the whistleblowers and everything else how this entire machinery of deception was used to basically hijack your government. And then we ultimately have guys from the government at the highest levels of the Department of Justice. We're not talking mid-tier guys. We're talking the very highest level of guys, and the FBI and the DOJ and the SEC and so forth, and AGs around the country. Not to mention, we found the only RICO conviction for this crime in the entire country that proves what should have happened to all of the guys on Wall Street. And ultimately, again, going back to the theme, if you're concerned about democracy, okay, it's over. It's done. We're in this thing that's just, again, at the very best, it's the robber barons versus the new robber barons versus the new Confederacy. At the worst, it's a mafia state, and that's exactly what Putin is. I mean, on display, the guy can murder oligarchs and journalists and get away with it, and nobody stops him, and same with the Saudis, and, at the same time, oil is king, okay? What don't you get? So the con gives you the details of how we can pull together, if you're informed, to create a movement, a giant movement that basically people are fed up. They're like, I'm not going to get destroyed anymore. I now know how the economy works to basically keep me in debt slavery and keep me down, and I have no chance to go forward. The American dream is dead. What more do you need to rise? That's why I say, hashtag the resurrection. Or what do you need to break the chains of bondage? That's why I say hashtag Exodus. And, and then ultimately, what do you need to do to overcome the Confederacy? That's why I say hashtag truth is marching. I mean, all of these wars have been fought before, okay? Now it's up to us. And it's up to us to do it in a massive, smart way that basically gets the right people into power based on the knowledge, based on millions of us coming together to overcome the wall of deception that technology literally gets paid to fucking do, miraculously and brilliantly. These are all the headwinds. It's like, for me, I think about it all the time, and I'll finish with this. It's the battle of the bastards. Did you ever see that on Game of Thrones? It's the battle of the bastards. I feel like we're in this mud box, slugging it out, having the bad guys coming at us with these long spears, and it's just like, Jesus, what's it going to take to break through? Well, obviously in Game of Thrones it worked out, but in the end, using the same analogy, guys, if you get control of the White House, if you get control of Congress, you get control of the Fed. That's why all of these billionaires are slugging it out like nonstop to use you as a tool in their own cultural war so that they can have absolute control to destroy the rest of us. Does it sound like a science fiction movie? It is. It's worse because it's real life. Let's get together and let's try to break this madness before it breaks us. Onwards and upwards.